Well, let me ask you about what Donald Trump, the president of the United States, has had to say. He's had a lot to say about your campaign. He called you a communist. Because he's the president, I want to give you a chance to respond directly to him. How do you respond? Are you a communist?
No, I am not. And I have already had to start to get used to the fact that the president will talk about how I look, how I sound, where I'm from, who I am. And when we talk about my politics, I call myself a democratic socialist.
Communism, sometimes referred to as revolutionary socialism, defined by Marxist theories when taken to their extreme end. In fact, Marxists often refer to as socialism as the first, necessary phase on the way from capitalism to communism. Marx and Engels themselves didn't consistently or clearly differentiate communism from socialism, which helped ensure lasting confusion between the two terms.
In many ways inspired by the words of Dr. King from decades ago, who said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there has to be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And as income inequality has declined nationwide, it has increased in New York City. And ultimately, what we need is a city where every single person can thrive.
The new Negro is a person with a new sense of dignity and destiny, with a new self-respect.
So that no Christian can be a communist because communism leaves out God. It regards religion psychologically as wishful thinking, regards religion intellectually as the product of fear and ignorance. And it regards religion historically as an instrument serving the ends of exploiters. And so, in a real sense, we disagree with this because we believe that history is moved, pray on, in this universe. Yes, sir. Yes, a God who loves his children, and a God who works through history for the salvation of man. Pray on. Consequently, we can't accept communism at that point. A second reason that we can't accept communism is that its methods are opposed to Christianity. Pray on, since for the communist there is no divine government or no absolute moral order, there are no fixed, immutable principles. So force, violence, murder, and lying are all justifiable means to bring about the millennial end. Lenin, the man who was something of the technician of communism, putting the philosophy of Karl Marx into practical action, said on one occasion, "We must be ready to employ trickery, deceit, and law-breaking, withholding and concealing truth." 6. That the followers of Lenin have been willing to act upon these instructions is a matter of history. For communism, the end justifies the means.
We cannot win a violent campaign in this country. If I were not morally inclined to nonviolence, I would be pragmatically inclined. But after all, we have neither the techniques nor the instruments of violence, and I say to be throwing bricks at men with machine guns is not only being violent, it's being foolish.
There again, we can't go along with this. We believe that there are certain moral principles in this universe that are eternal and absolute. We believe that there are some things right and there are some things wrong. It's wrong to lie. It always has been wrong, and it always will be wrong. It's wrong to hate. Yes, sir, it always has been wrong, and it always will be wrong. It's wrong to throw away the precious lives that God has given us in riotous living. It was wrong in 1800 BC, and it's wrong in 1962 AD. It's wrong in Russia. It's wrong in China. It's wrong in India. It's wrong in New York. It's wrong in Atlanta. Yeah. We believe that there are some things right, eternally and absolutely so, and there are some things wrong. then we don't believe that the end justifies the means if those means happen to be bad. For we know that the end represents the means in process and the ideal in the making. The end is pre-existent in the means. And so destructive means cannot bring about constructive ends. Immoral methods cannot achieve moral goals. And so we disagree with the ethical relativism of communism. In the third place, we have to disagree with communism because the end of communism is the state.
Opponent who would display all the ugliness of segregation, and that was Birmingham Police Chief Eugene Bull Connor.
Do you think you can keep Birmingham in the present situation of segregation?
I may not be able to do it, but I'll die trying.
Images of the beating and hosing of child demonstrators were seen all over the world.
I should qualify this by saying that the state in communist theory is a temporary reality, an interim reality, which is to be eliminated when the classless society emerges. Karl Marx talks of that day when there will be a classless society. The ruling class, or rather the workers, what he called the proletariat, will through the revolution take power from the ruling class, which were the producers or the capitalists. And finally they will come to power, and through their power, they will establish a classless society. He says that while you are on the way to this classless society, the state is the end. Man becomes only a means to that end. And if any man's so-called rights or liberties stand in the way of that end, they are simply swept aside. And so in the communistic system, you do not have freedom of the press. You do not have freedom of speech. You do not have freedom of assembly. All of these things are under the scrutiny of the state, which is manipulated through the party. And whatever the party says, that must be done. All of the freedoms that are dear to us are denied. Man has to be a servant, a dutiful and submissive servant of the state. The state is omnipotent and supreme, and so if one lived in Russia today, he couldn't just get up and make a speech against the Communist Party. Right, if one lived in Russia today, he could not write a book saying certain things without the condemnation of the party. He may be searched and even killed. Yeah, you remember the great book that Pasternak wrote, and you remember the problems that he faced because there were within that book some things that they didn't like in Russia. Point 7, it had some criticisms of the system. We know that the most creative moments in history are those moments when individuals are left free to think. The thing that makes man man is his freedom. This is why I could never agree with communism as a philosophical system, because it deprives man of freedom. And if a man is not free, he is not fully man. If a man does not have the capacity to deliberate, to decide, and to respond, as Paul Tillich would say, he is not a man, for a man is man because he is free. And, therefore, communism is on the wrong road because it denies freedom. And so for these three reasons, I am convinced that no Christian can be a communist. These two systems are opposed to each other. These two systems are contradictory. We must try to understand communism. We must love communists. But never can we accept communism and be true Christians. Yet, we must realize that there is something in communism which challenges us all. It was the late Archbishop of Canterbury, William Temple, that referred to communism as a Christian heresy. I want you to follow me as I go through this other aspect of the message. By this he meant that communism had laid hold on certain truths which are essential parts of the Christian view of things, but that it had bound up with them concepts and practices which no Christian can ever accept or profess. Point 8. In other words, although communism can never be accepted by a Christian, it emphasizes many essential truths that must forever challenge us as Christians. Indeed, it may be that communism is a necessary corrective for a Christianity that has been all too passive and a democracy that has been all too inert. Communism should challenge us to be more concerned about social justice. However much is wrong with communism, we must admit that it arose as a protest against the hardships of the underprivileged. The Communist Manifesto, which was published in 1847 by Marx and Engels, emphasizes throughout how the middle class has exploited the lower class. Communism in society is a classless society. Along with this goes a strong attempt to eliminate racial prejudice. Communism seeks to transcend the superficialities of race and color. And you are able to join the Communist Party whatever the color of your skin or the quality of your blood, the quality of blood in your veins. No one can deny that we need to be concerned about social justice. Karl Marx arouses our conscience at this point. Karl Marx was born a Jew in a rabbinic family. Somewhere along the way as a child, he must have heard his parents reading the words of Amos, "Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." And then, when he was 6 years old, his parents became Christians, and somewhere along the way he must have heard them reading over the New Testament, "Ye do it unto the least of these, ye do it unto me." 10. So with this passionate concern for social justice, Christians are bound to be in accord. Such concern is implicit in the Christian doctrine of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. 11. Christians are always to begin with a bias in favor of a movement which protests against unfair treatment of the poor, but surely Christianity itself is such a protest. The Communist Manifesto might express a concern for the poor and the oppressed, but it expresses no greater concern than the Manifesto of Jesus, which opens with the words, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captive, recovering the sight of the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord." 12. And so a passionate concern for social justice must be a concern of the Christian religion. Stanford University. Stanford. The Martin Luther King Jr. Research and Education Institute. Can a Christian be a communist? Sermon delivered at Ebenezer Baptist Church.